as expected, right? So I don't think you had any issues with running this short program. So this is your second program. I did check your repositories, and most of you do have uploaded, but if you have not uploaded the text file for this program, please do upload it, right? So I have, I should see two files, first program and the second program, which is this program, right? So you should have two files, and text file is fine, right? Because you're not using any any IDE. So I guess you just copy the piece of code and then put it in the text file, save it as a text file, and then upload it on your Git repository. That's all. Okay, so those are your in-class assignments. So moving on, in this PowerPoint, we have our third program, right? So this program here, it gives you information on a loop, right? So okay, so there is a statement here, right? So you see a for statement here. Okay, so you see a statement here. It's called as a for statement, and it takes in some arguments, right? So we have, how many for statements do you have in this code? There are two for statements, right? So this is your first for statement, and this is your second for statement. So there is, so for statement takes in some arguments, right? So I'll explain those arguments, but before using the for statement, we have created a data structure. What data structure do you think we have created in this program? Any guess? What is the data structure? So data structure can be like data frame, it can be matrix, it can be vector, it can be a list. It says on the slide. It's an array. Okay, so we have created an array. So the way to create an array is you have to choose your data type, right? So from our previous program, we know that there are data types like integers, there are floats, there are strings, there are characters, right? So we have tried to make an array here with int data type, right? So we are using int data type integers, and the data structure is an array, right? So to make an array, there is this third statement here, right? Allocation. This is how you create an array, right? So obviously you don't have to memorize any of these, right? But this is the way. You can just Google and you'll find that there are several ways of creating an array in Java, right? So what you are doing here is you are creating a new array. So new is a keyword, right? So you're explicitly telling that I want to create a new array. So that is the new word here. And we need an int array, as I said, right? We need integers in this array. And the array formation is denoted by two square brackets, right? So you see these square brackets here. So I want to create an array, which is an int data type. It's a new array, and I am assigning a name to that array. What is the name to this array? A, right? So on the left side, it is just an assignment where I say, let's call this array as A array. So you can have any array, right? So A is the array name. And in this name, you are creating the new array. That's the keyword, right? Then I want to have int as my data type. So this array will only hold integer values like 1, 0, 2, 100, 1,000, right? Only integers. It cannot hold strings or characters, right? It will complain because you are saying or stating that I want this to be an int array only, right? If you want to create a string array, then you have to mention the string keyword or character keyword, float keyword, right? So this is just a basic int array. And can you tell me one last property of the statement? In this statement, there is A, there is new, there is int. And what does that mean? Yeah, correct, right? So I want that array to store 10 integers or 10 ints. That's it. So if you try to add an 11th int number, it is going to complain, right? So it's a dimension specific array, right? So my question is, what do I do if I want to have like an infinite array, infinite one dimensional array? What should I do in the statement? Right? So you just remove 10. That would be an infinite array, right? Got it, right? Okay, so this statement is called an allocation statement, right? So this is in your PowerPoint, and this PowerPoint is uploaded on your Moodle. So so this is a way to create your array called A, which would hold 10 integer values. And there are obviously other ways, right? Other statements to create such arrays. This is not just one statement, right? So you can come up with a different statement where you can say that, okay, these 10 numbers should be like, say, between 0 and say 100, or between say some between and you can give a criteria, right, for your numbers. So you can do several things, but this is just the basic way of creating an array. Then we are creating a new variable called I, right? So next statement says int I. So I is just a variable which is of int data type. Okay. So first statement is you create an array. Second statement here is creating just an variable name called I, which is an int variable. And the third statement here is your for loop, right? So can anyone explain me what does that mean? What does this statement mean for? Yes, that's exactly what it is, right? So this is a for statement, and it is it has a criteria here, right? So these are the arguments in the for statement, and it is usually used to as a counter, as you said, right? A counter. So a counter has a start, a counter has an end, and a counter has an increment. Okay, so counter has a start. So you want to start counting from number 0. So I is 0. Then end. So we want to count till number 10, or probably less than 10, right? So I is less than 10. So we want to count till 9, right? Less than 10 is 9. And the increment is I plus plus. What does I plus plus mean? increment by 1, right? I plus plus. So what should I do if I want to increment by 1 or less than 1? Yeah, 1 less. What? I minus minus, right? So everything has like some logic here, right? So I plus plus is 1 plus, I minus minus is 1 minus. That's your increment. So you have a start, 0, end, 9, increment plus 1. Okay, so then in for statement, you have this first criteria, and then that can be followed by anything, right? So anything what you want to do with that for statement. So in this case, we just want to print, right? So I'll just remove this these two statements. I'll remove the second for loop for statement for you. But then from the first for statement, we just want to print our array or each element in the array. So my question is, right? So my question is, you have given your criteria in for statement 0 to 9. So your increment would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is followed by this println statement. So look at this println statement and tell me what output should I expect from this println statement. What do you think would be an output from this statement? What should I be expecting? For example, say your first start is 0, right? I0. So what would be the output for your first increment? It's a loop, right? So it will print first line, it will print second line, it will print third line. So what will be your first line? Okay. Anyone else? Huh? Yes. First line would have A0. And then I should also do 0. Yes. That's correct. First line is correct. What would be the second line? With increment 1. 1 is correct. The second is wrong. The A0, 0. A1, 0. A2, 0. A3, 0. Yeah. Why do you think? No, you don't understand. Okay, let's run this program. Okay. All right. So let's do this. Okay. Okay. So open your say compiler, right? You're using a compiler. Yeah. Open a online Java compiler and let's run this second program. This is the only program which you have to do in this class. Okay. So I want you to run it and then generate the output, save the program in the text file and upload on Git. That's all. But I want you to know how it works because this would be one of your question in the exam. Hmm? What's that? The program? Let's call it as third program. Okay, so let's what? Yeah. Right. Let's okay, let me just test once. Mm, so call it as program, third Java program. Okay, can you see this? So just try to run this on your compiler. Okay, so try this on your compiler, your online compiler, and then run it and see what output you get. Okay. This is the same code from the pop one slide. Who is late? Where are you? Here? Okay. Try, test, and let me know what output you get. Okay. Do you have the output? Yeah. So yes. Uh, we should have 10 lines. So, from the main Zero. So then you need to change the name of this file. So the name is called Java. Yeah. Now you go to the repository. And here you call it as the class number. This type of object will be done. Now and create quality. Here you can see an option to upload on your side. Select the one on that's it. And once you upload it, then you have to wait comment. To upload it. You see the file? This is the file, right? Now it's comment. So the thing is, so now that will be uploaded. Okay, any other questions? Good. Okay, so what is the output for your program? For this program, what output do you get? Do you see this output here? A00, A10, A20, A30, A90, right? This is the output which you should have. So what we have done here is I've created a class name called third Java program. So you can have any class name you need, right? So this is my class name called third Java program. And this is just the public class, right? Public method. And as we discussed, I have just created a variable, int variable called a, and or actually an int array, right? So a is an array with 10 elements, right? It's an array with 10 elements is a. And then I've created an int variable called I, and then we have used a for loop, right? So the counter is from 0 to 9, increment is +1, and we have used println because we want to print output on 9 lines, right? 9 lines output. So line number 1, line number 2, line number 3. So print line. And in print line, we have printed our AI, right? So A bracket I. So what do you think is this printing? A quotation I. What is it? Is it a counter or is it an array? So, so this square bracket, is it a counter or is it the array value? There are two things here, right? So you're using a counter I and you have an array here of A. So this thing on the left side, is it the counter or is it the array? Huh? It is the counter, right? So I is 0. So for loop starts with your first start value, which is 0 here, right? So A 0, 0 is the counter. So uh, um, uh, first assign is your counter, right? So I is 0, so that's your counter value. The next assign here, once you take the counter, then print A of 0. And what should that be the value? Does our array has any values? Is it an empty array? It's an empty array, right? It's an empty array. So it should print 0. So first value is 0. Then the counter hits +1. Then A is 1. But still the array is 0. So right side should be 0. Then hits 3. Counter is 3 now. So A is 3. Value still 0. Then hit 4. Array is still empty. So value is 0. So that is the reason we get an output of A0 as 0, A1 as 0, A2 as 0, A9 as 0. That's the explanation for this for loop. Do we understand your confusion? So I will ask you to explain these statements, right? So I'll give you output. I'll give you the code. You just have to explain me what has happened, right? So this gives you some practice on what is a for loop. But this is a very basic for loop, right? So it's just a for loop. You can have like uh, multiple for loops, right? And then you can have different counters, right? Depending upon your use case. But this is it. That's your for loop. That's your array. And that's it. These are two things, right? So if you have this output, you should save this in your text file or Word document, and then call this program as third Java program, and then push it on your Git repository. That's it. Yeah. What? Text file. You don't have text editor? That's uh, uh, that's fine. Uh-huh. So let's remove this. A is null. Let's see what we get. You get the same output. So essentially, once your so it's just a good practice, right? To remove things after you have done with your counter, right? So you run your counter, and then you empty your like the array element. Right? So even if it does not make difference if you set A is null or A is not null, right? You can skip it if you want, but I try to just free up the space runtime. So okay. All right. So this is your third Java program. and you should just upload it. And I guess that's the slide number 6. And okay, that's the slide number 6. The slide number 7 is a multi-dimensional array. Okay, so we saw this simple example for one-dimensional array, right? So the example which we just ran is for one-dimensional array, right? So you do int a, right? And then say you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? This is a single dimension array. There's something called a multi-dimensional array. So in multi-dimensional array, you should have more than one dimension, right? So right, this is an example of multi-dimensional array. So it's a 3 by 3 array, right? So you see there are 3 rows and there are 3 columns, right? So it has more than one dimension, right? So in one dimensional array, you just have list of elements. In say 3-dimensional array or multi-dimensional array, you have more than one list of elements, right? So the way to create that multi-dimensional array is this statement here. A is new int, and then you give number of rows, number of columns. So how many? What do you think is this statement doing? This statement here.
Creating a 10 by 20 array.
What is 10? What is 20? Yeah, 10 is row, 20 is column, right? So it's a 10 by 20 multi-dimensional array. So I want you to know, how do you create a single dimensional array, which is from our previous statement, and how do you create a multi-dimensional array? 10 rows, 20 columns. So I would ask you to create an multi-dimensional array called as say whatever, like multi-class, right, with some name. And I would like to have 50 rows and 100 columns. So you would just have int 50, 100, right? So basics, right? You understand, right? So that's your multi-dimensional array. So in the next class, we will try to create some of these multi-dimensional arrays, and then we will try to work on some selections and sub-selections from that multi-dimensional array. So it gets little complicated now, right? Because you have like your rows, then you have columns. So how would you select elements from some of these cells? If I want to select number 4, right? Number 4. So this is number 4 here, right? So this number 4 is in second row, and which column is it? Second column. So this is how you do selection on cells. So these blocks are called as cells, right? Small cells. So I want to pick number 4. So that would be row 2, column 2. Sub-selection on cells. Right. So next class we will do that, and then we'll create some of these arrays, and then possibly try some for loop or print statements, right? Okay, so this should be our next class slide, right? That's it. That's all we have to do today. If you have questions, you can ask me. If not, I'll be seeing you on Monday at 5. That's it. We're done. Okay, anyone any late? Yeah, where are you? Which row? Yeah.